All right, y'all. We are live, streaming live on Twitter, X, YouTube Live, and Rumble for a special live AMA with my guy, Professor Dave Collum. Professor Dave, welcome back to the show, man. How you doing?
I'm feeling good. I just realized I should go find your live feed and retweet it.
Oh,
Is that in your Twitter feed?
yeah, I think I'll tag you in it. And look, we got a bunch of people joining the show now. Listen, y'all, if y'all have any questions, just drop them in the chat. Professor Dave and I will answer live. All I ask is that, y'all just be respectful to Professor Dave.
Don't
And
have to be. I don't care.
Professor Dave did promise to be on his best behavior, y'all. So y'all got to do the same.
Yeah, I've crossed my fingers. Uh,
um, so Professor Dave, first thing, it's becoming an annual thing every time we do a show is, so the first time you were on, Bitcoin was at like 17,000 per coin. Then the
right.
next time you were on, it was at like 30,000 per coin. Now I believe we hit 37,000 per coin. Has the narrative in Professor Dave's head changed any over Bitcoin, or is it still the same?
Has the narrative changed? I spent some time with Lynn Alden, and
Ooh.
and someone like her could probably have the most impact on my thinking. Her book's coming out. I'm waiting for audio. I think I'm going to pound through that. Um, I
She's one of the
still
best.
right, like genius best.
Mhm.
And and as I've said to so many people, I think that you guys are going to have to do battle with the state, capital S. And I don't know who can win that. And I know that the Bitcoin guys say, well, you can't touch me because I got Bitcoin. Um, if they say, look, you're going to go to prison if you use it, right? January 6th, there's a good message. Oh, you can't touch me, free speech. Well, 22 years in prison, that's pretty good. So the long arm of the state, when it gets rough, they'll beat you senseless. So at some point, you guys, I think you're going to have to do battle with them, and I'm trying to figure out who's going to win that. And
What
if I figure that out, then that'll lock me into a
or
firm stance. A firm stance.
we hope to have you on our side, Professor Dave. You're
Well,
always
you should,
welcome to
because if I join your side, it means I came to the same conclusion. But it's not about the
Yeah.
price. Everyone always says, "What price?" I go, "It's not about the price. It's about
You
the
told me that last time. That does actually make a lot of sense. I believe you said that, when you're into an asset, it's not about the price and you like to go essentially all into the asset. Is that correct?
well." It's like I'm not buying $10,000 life insurance policies, right? They don't
Mhm.
make sense. So people say, "Why not just get 1%?" I go, "Because it won't change my life. Period."
Mhm.
Now, one of the things that would lean me towards it, and my worldview is shifting in this direction, is a sense of really sort of societal upheaval, um, serious societal upheavals, which seem to be growing in terms of risk. And so, actually, one of the things Lynn said, and I think she's probably used this a few times, about someone who had to escape with their lives, and they came across the border and got to
Yep.
safety and had their keys, right?
Mhm.
And I've never really thought we were at risk. It's not so sure now. I'm not positive. So the 1% Bitcoin would be enough to buy you a meal potentially, but you still got to convert it. You still got to convert it to currency. You somehow got to find a way to spend it.
Unless somebody will just buy, the keys or the flash drive from. So say you have, 10 G's on a flash drive and you cross the
Yeah,
border and then you just
that's
sell.
complicated. That's complicated. If you're on the run and stuff, you know, I'm on the run. I want to have spending power right there. I want to be able to hit a 7-Eleven and eat.
Yeah, I hope I'm never in that situation, Professor Dave.
Well,
But
that would get me thinking now. If I'm a Jew in 1936 and I'm eyeballing what's going on in the country, and there was Bitcoin, I'd be going, now I understand.
worth a shot. Yeah, worth a shot, I mean, but Professor Dave, so when we posted this video on Twitter, we did have a couple questions come in. I mean, I forget the guy's name that posted it, but one of them is what are some of your favorite stories from the chemistry world?
Oh,
Animation mechanism saga. I don't really know what that is.
I didn't either. I saw that. I from the chemistry world.
Guess maybe from your class he's talking about.
I guess so. I get gag orders put on me fairly regularly, where someone will try to tell me, "Oh, you should stay on target and not go off the script." And I go, "Yeah, okay, whatever," but I can't. Um,
Mhm.
my stories all have purpose. I mean, they're very rarely just random utterances. Usually, there's some sort of message in it. And sometimes it's a moral message. Sometimes, I don't talk about Trump versus Biden or anything like that, but I do have message in my stories, and I think sometimes they fly over the heads of the kids because they don't understand. So I've got one kid who listens to me, comes to my office occasionally, says you're too dark, says you're too pessimistic, and the problem is that this is exactly what you would say if you grew up in the tail end of the bounty,
Mhm.
and you had no historical reference to say, okay, so whether it's Fourth Turning or Ray Dalio's book is pretty good, actually. I'm not a Dalio acolyte, but his book's pretty good, actually.
Mhm.
And he's kind of Fourth Turning econ flavor. So he goes through the various good events and bads, but he talks about in the context of debt and things like that. But it's really sort of Strauss and Howe, uh, from a different angle, and he's got us sort of on the cusp of violence and mayhem, and
Mhm.
changes in power structures and things like that. So Ray's dark.
So your students, does your social media presence or persona, does that spill over into the class? Like, do they ever watch any of your content and
I don't
maybe
know. I don't. I gotta figure. One of my colleagues once said, one of the students said, "Can't the chemistry department come out and make a statement about my Twitter feed?" And my colleague said, "What would we say? I mean, what do you want?" Right? We
So,
all have opinions. So he handled it well.
yeah, I
But
mean,
but 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 we're in an era now where I had a funny thing happen this week, actually, where one of my colleagues over in the art squad, a guy I've never met, who generated massive headlines on the Hamas thing, where he expressed exhilaration
mhm,
over the killing in Israel. And you could go down all sorts of paths supporting various sides and various reasons, but to talk about the exhilaration of a mass killing, that didn't work for pretty much anybody. And the president denounced him. And I have problems with the president saying that these are not Cornell's values, because she can't speak for Cornell. She can speak for herself. She can bring the gravitas of being the president. But I'm Cornell, my colleagues are Cornell, the students are Cornell. She can't say these are Cornell values. And I've actually talked to a couple of trustees about it. And one of them said, I'm going to talk to her about that, actually.
mhm,
Um, and then she said in a recent article this week, she said, only twice have I ever criticized the speech of a faculty member. This is only the second time. The first time
mhm,
was me. First time was me.
mhm. Yeah,
And it was something I was right about. She was wrong.
mhm,
Turns out I defended the police. They knocked over that guy in Buffalo. He was a grifter. He'd been a pain in their ass. He was skimming their electronic equipment. He faked being injured. The whole thing was nuts. And I didn't say anything particularly unusual. I said that it was odd that he was there, and why was he poking him, and it's kind of self-inflicted.
mhm.
That's not, I didn't say he deserved to die or anything. There was just nothing like that. And somehow the students got upset. I think it was an astroturf cancellation. But to stop it, she and four others signed a letter declaring that what I said didn't represent Cornell values. And when I wrote about it and I explained the whole thing, I got to the end. I said, "Are you sure I don't represent Cornell's values?" Because I just laid out what the truth is,
Mhm.
as opposed to the crap that they were believing. So she's done that several times. So running a campus right now is very, very difficult.
Oh,
I
yeah,
just can't fathom what it would be like. The provost is a friend of mine. So when
mhm,
I battled the unions twice one of the battles was at the request of the dean of faculty, and the other was at the request of the provost. Phone call late at night, Dave, you need to mount the counterattack. So I did. I paid a very dear price. A lot of smear campaigns and stuff. He even signed that letter denouncing me, but I don't think he believed it. I was going to send him an email and say, Mike, you have my condolences. This has been a tough week. But I realized that he's probably received 500,000 emails.
Yeah, the whole, like from when I went to college, and I went to a smaller college, but it just seems the landscape, whether freedom of speech, the tribalism, the protests, and Mike actually asked a question about this. Let me pin this. Mike asked, in all of your years of teaching, what are the similarities and differences in the students? Because you've been teaching what, almost 30 years at
43.
All at Cornell?
All at Cornell.
Wow. So
I was an undergrad there, so 47. So I've seen Cornell from the student's perspective too.
Wow. So Gen Z, Gen X, all these different, what is the current landscape, like the current students? Is there any similarities to the previous generations, like Mike asked, or?
No. No. The best way to understand what happened is to read Jonathan Haidt and Greg Lukianoff's book, Coddling the American Mind. There's actually, if you want to save yourself the time, there's a documentary now being made, a movie, in which I don't know how they're going to do it, but there's going to be about those two. And what they said was that they were chatting one day, and they both somehow independently drew the conclusion that the kids coming to Haidt was at NYU at that point, as was Lukianoff, that the students in the class of 2004, the freshmen entering class in 2014, were different.
Yeah.
Just strikingly different. And so they started chatting about it, and then they wrote a book. And it's about sort of the entitlement and the victimhood and the trigger warnings and all that crap. And in some level, you can't blame the students because we raised them, right? They didn't raise themselves.
Just like our politicians, right? I mean,
well, except we don't control that. At least I'm not taking credit for our politicians, because that's a crime syndicate running that operation. But so the theory is that 2014 freshman class were the first to have gone through some formative period in their life, maybe the early teens, with iPhones, with real access to social media, and that all of a sudden there was this big change. And ever since then, it's pretty whacked. What I've noticed about the students, and I've told the class this isn't news, they study very differently. And I noticed it last year, actually.
They study differently?
Yeah.
I was a crammer. Night before the test, I would just cram. What do you mean they study?
At Cornell, you flunk out doing that. So
I wouldn't have made it in Cornell. Yeah.
Right. And so when I was undergrad, I was terrified because I wasn't a great student in high school. And you can say, how'd I get into Cornell? That's a separate story altogether. But I studied every day. I went to the library at 9, went to class, came home for dinner, went back up, came back at 11, spent a little time goofing off, then went to bed and repeated. And that was 7 days a week.
So I guess the current students, they're not studying like that, or?
Well, I read an article one day about University of Texas. I think it was at Arlington. Could be wrong in that, but one of the Texas schools, where they had online reading assignments, and because it was online, they could tell when the kids were reading. So the reading assignments would be up on the screen, but that doesn't mean they're reading. But an algorithm that's trivially written could actually ascertain that they're reading because it's scrolling or whatever, right? And their conclusion was, and I don't know if this is per course per semester or per semester total, it doesn't really matter. Their conclusion was that kids were reading 162 minutes a semester. Now, there's no reason for that college to exist, right? There's none whatsoever.
That's pretty bad.
And so I was talking about this with someone today. Someone asked me about it, and I said, we're gonna gut it. The fish is gonna rot from the middle.
Mm-hmm.
I talked to I had invited when I was chair, I invited an economist to a faculty meeting. We have great faculty meetings. We're the only department that does this, where we invite outsiders to come and give a talk at our faculty lunch.
Like
It could be
motivational speakers, or
well, it could be the provost, it could be the head bean counter of the university, it could be the guy in charge of the parking, could
Mhm.
be the person who runs the Johnson Art Museum, anything that suits our fancy. Someone in the development office, trustee, some person just has a good story.
Mhm.
And so we have a department that's so educated about the world around them. And I've asked a number of speakers, many, you know, do other departments invite you in to do this? And they've never said yes. And I've told deans and stuff, you should tell departments to do this, because my colleagues know a ton about how the university works, which is why we are very prominent in the university, because we tend to run divisions and things like that, because we know what we're doing.
Mhm.
And I can't even remember why I told you that story.
Is there friction or something with the different
Oh,
departments?
I brought in an economist who's kind of an expert at university finance. So
Yeah.
it's not all he does, but he kind of dug into that. And he sitting in my office before the faculty meeting, we chatted for about a half an hour, and that could be fun. I mean, we had the Secretary of Energy come in. I get to chat with him about why I thought global warming was crap. Um, and this economist said he thinks the golden age of academia is over.
Mhm.
And this guy's been studying it. So, the costs are too high. The debts accruing are disastrous.
Mhm.
We're discovering that, I don't know about we, but some people are discovering that maybe instead of going to even an elite college and studying some subject, which I don't want to name because I'll get someone pissed off, but think of one that doesn't have a big payday at the end. Put it this way, not computer science, not
Mhm.
physics, not
Oh,
engineering.
I gotcha. I know what you're talking about.
Um, and that's just not worth it, right? So
Mhm.
there's majors that should be courses. There's courses that should be history, as I like to say, and there's colleges that shouldn't exist. So I think we could cut the colleges in half.
Oh,
Send
absolutely.
send some of those guys off to BOCES to learn how to do plumbing and carpentry and electronics and various high tech stuff, right? Various computer stuff, and
The amount of
and
money that goes to, higher
mm,
ed, just in Louisiana alone, it's incredible. But Professor Dave, we got some more questions coming in. So
fire.
Cody asked, are flying squirrels birds? I mean,
No, no, they're
I would
mammals. They don't fly. They're the closest genetically. The closest thing a flying squirrel is to one of those Northern European wingsuited crazies who go flying down the
yeah.
mountainside. Those are genetically, those are flying squirrels.
I've always said squirrels are just rats with good PR. That's all it
Exactly,
is pretty much a
exactly.
rat. Another question came in, and look, y'all, if y'all got any questions, type them in the chat. All subjects, but just no weird shit. Lewis
You
asked,
can
how
ask
bad
weird
is
shit. I don't care.
all right, you can add a little bit of weird shit. Lewis asks, how bad is cheating with Chat GBT and technology in college now? Boy, I wish they had Chat GBT when I was in college. I'd
Well,
have been an AI expert.
this story goes actually back a little ways. So Chat GPT is the headliner right now, but for quite a few years now, you've been able to, if you wanted to write a paper and you had the resources, you could outsource the paper. There's guys
Mm,
who wrote papers for you. You say, I need a
mm,
5-page paper on such and such, and there's guys out there who'd write it for you.
mm,
So that sort of rode the coattails of the internet onto the college campuses. So that already exists. The fact that you can search a paper for plagiarism means that the traditional plagiarism of grabbing something off the internet and just doing it, that can be checked easily. So that's not it. ChatGPT brought in a whole new dimension because it's technically not plagiarism, right? It's original writing by AI. I was going to as of about a year ago, I'd gotten sort of unofficial clearance to as one of my 2 semesters of teaching, teach a freshman writing seminar. Now, what we had is this great freshman writing program where every freshman had to take 2 semesters of writing, and the topics were anything imaginable. The goal was pick a topic you like, and then you have to write papers. You have to learn how to write. And so we taught writing by making it topical enough with, if in elementary school we didn't have to read Dick and Jane when I was a kid, I might like reading, except Dick and Jane were so insufferable. You had to have taken it to an R rating for me to care. So I was going to teach a writing course on personal finance because I'm obsessive about writing and editing. I'm kind of born again, where I learned to write a little late, but then I became fanatical about it. And then ChatGPT showed up, and I realized I was never going to get an original paper again. So it's not clear what the relationship is of ChatGPT to cheating. The rules are being written as we speak.
Well, do you ever see, like, say, like maybe a student that was an underachieving student, then all of a sudden ChatGPT's out, and now he's writing perfect papers, turning in, any type of projects or something, like where you're like, man, I know this kid didn't write this. Is anything like that happening?
Well, I'm sure it's happening all over the place, but
Absolutely.
how do you catch? I had a funny story there when I was trying to get my son to let me help him learn how to write, and of course he just wants to get the assignment done. And this was in I don't know, 9th or 10th grade, and I went to help him, and I'm thinking this is a great opportunity to teach him how to edit, right? And he says, no matter what we do, I'm still going to get a B. And I said, why? And she says, because the teacher doesn't like me. And I said, well, let's see. And so we edited it. It was a very good learning experience for him. And then he got a B. And I know it was better than I know it was better than the shit he was submitting. And then one day I was reading about a guy who actually had his daughter write a book report about his book. She wrote a book report about her dad's book. Dad helped her, and she got a B. So this is not that rare. I think the teachers, if you give some middle school teacher the task of grading 120 papers, are they really going to grade them all really carefully? No. And so they figure out who's smart, who's not, and then they just kind of give them those grades from that point on.
That is exactly what would happen to me in college. I was kind of in that, just give Kevin a B or C. You know what I'm saying? And there'd never be pushback from me. But Professor Dave, did you
spelling tests, for example, are fine because you could just grade the spelling test, right? Math, same, but a writing, the teacher forms an opinion of who you are and who you're not. And then
exactly, and a lot would be Scantron too, where they just throw them in the machine. But Professor Dave, did you watch the GOP debates last night?
No, I heard about them. Did Ramaswamy slap Nikki Haley around or not?
So I watched like half of it, and it's just like that format just like infuriates me. But he had some, kind of like viral moments. I don't like Nikki Haley. I don't like her at all.
She's a war hawk.
Yeah. But I had to turn it off, man. I don't like the format of these debates. But I'd say of what I saw, Vivek probably did the best, and I think that's what they're kind of saying on Twitter, that he was the shining star of the whole thing. But
I think he's looking for a VP position.
There's so many rumors about him. One is Mike said he called her Dick Cheney and heels. But you see, like, I don't know. Then
I find him to be overproduced. His answers are almost too perfect.
Well, did you see the videos of him copying Obama's speeches? Like, there's videos of him, like you could look him up, where he's verbatim copying Obama's speeches. So I don't know if he's got somebody writing his stuff. Are
we even sure it's true? That's the other problem.
Well, Mike said he never criticizes Trump, so that would fall into obviously a theory that he wants to be VP. I've heard
or
another
that he doesn't
theory.
want to get in a fight with Trump,
Yeah, but
or that he knows he's got to get the MAGA vote. You pick on Trump, you're going to lose the MAGA vote. Trump has really got the Republicans cornered.
oh yeah, it doesn't look like there's any way, besides, him dying or going to jail, literally being taken off the ballots. Well, actually, if he went to jail, he could still be the nominee. But
Well,
I guess the strategy of that from Vivek, I don't know if that'd be a good strategy, because wouldn't you want to go after Trump if you want to be the nominee? But
I don't. I think you got to get the MAGA vote.
you do. But the other theory is that it's just for publicity, because he's got like a podcast now, and it's just kind of, catapulted him into the scene, and now he went from an obscurity.
Well, I think a better theory is that he's campaigning for 2028.
Possibility.
Because a lot of times the candidates false start on their first run and then become the nominee later.
Oh, it's a good false start. It's definitely, I think he's kind of changed the way politicians are going to handle campaigning going forward, with his strategy of just going on every single podcast, from small people.
As have Kennedy.
Yeah, Robert Kennedy implemented the same strategy now. So he's running as
now, Robert Kennedy was ahead of Vivek.
Is he?
I think he was ahead of him in terms of going on every podcast.
Oh yeah, I think you're right. Yeah, he was kind of the first. Vivek's doing it too, but so he is running as an independent now, and it's just getting weird, man. Because a lot of people saying that he's going to actually take votes away from Trump, but I guess the bigger question would be, is Biden even going to be the nominee?
So let's hypothetically stay with Biden as the nominee. I don't think so. I don't think it's easy to pull the MAGA guys away from Trump. And I'm not saying MAGA pejoratively. I'm just saying that, yeah, if you vote for Trump, you're going to be labeled MAGA. So it's just easier to call them that. So the guys who want to vote for Trump really want to vote for Trump. So I'm not sure that theory is correct. It could be propaganda to try to shape the narrative a little bit. I do believe that he could pull people away who are, Kennedy could pull away. First of all, he's a Democrat, so pulling away from a Republican is already a pretty high bar. But he would get my vote. I mean, I would happily vote for him. So
you would vote for him over Trump, or
it's conceivable. It's conceivable.
Wow.
I'm not. Well, the problem is, and it's not against Trump. I kind of need the world to settle down a little bit for me.
Tell me about it. Gee.
Right. And so the idea of another 4 years, and it wouldn't even be Trump's fault, but it would be 4 years of chaos. So
it's gonna, 100%. It'll be that last Trump presidential run. That was nothing to this
compared to this
cycle.
one, right? He knows where the spoons and stuff are too. So when he gets in office, it's gonna be a bloodbath when he gets in office.
What's the temperature like on campus right now? Is it Trump? Is it Vivek? Is it Biden, DeSantis? I mean, I couldn't even imagine.
On my campus or on campus?
Yeah, on Cornell.
I don't know. The challenges, one of the differences with the kids also is that they've been raised since daycare to be neo-Marxists. And so the sentence say they're not nice people, but they're like I, for example, am openly anti-transgender in women's sports. Seems insane to me. Go ahead, cancel me again. I don't care. We fought so hard to get women's sports, men's sports sacrificed for women's sports. I was a gymnast. They got wiped out. Wrestling got wiped out. There's various sports that got wiped out to try to bring this parity thing back into alignment. We finally get women's sports. You drive past the stadium and there's the women in there practicing, smacking each other. That's really good. It's great for women. I used to coach Taekwondo. I coached 2 sports in collegiate sports. And women doing Taekwondo is phenomenal. It's a great thing for young women. Benefits them more than young men. and then to bring guys back in, and you want to call them transgender, you can, but the English language, as someone said, I think it was Weinstein said, when you screw the language, you convert a sharp implement into a dull rock.
Mm-hmm.
And so you want to call a transgender a woman, you're mutating the language. Give them a name. I don't care. Transgender women, right? That's fine.
Yeah, it's kind of an oxymoron, but like think about like say like the Olympics, you know, because like we're obviously seeing this. So like, are you telling me like what would happen in the Olympics if a man tried to compete in a like say an American man or American trans man, or I don't know what the nomenclature is, tried to compete in a woman's sport against the Chinese in, you know, Russia and all these other countries and won a gold medal? Like, do you think that the Olympic Committee would allow that?
Well, years ago we banned it when the Russians and Eastern Europeans tried to do it.
They tried that before.
Oh yeah, the famous Russian athletes. So you look and you go, that's not a woman.
Oh,
they were planting men into women's sports to win gold medals back during the Cold War. Famous Eastern European athletes, yeah. What will eventually happen is the free market will probably win this battle because for now, someone like Leah Thomas gets a lot of clickbait because she's a news story. But after that's gone, then no one's going to watch the sport.
Exactly.
Right. And the dollars will flow, and the Olympics will not remotely pay for themselves. And I read recently about a jiu-jitsu tournament where the medal podium in certain events, women's events, were all transgender females.
Really?
And in at least one of the weight classes, it was all transgender. I think it means the women disappeared. They boycotted.
You know, for being such like a polarizing issue, and you know, I just look at it like obviously
it shouldn't be. It
shouldn't be. But like the idea of like if you look at the landscape of not just the United States but the world, all the issues we have going on right now, for that to be, you know, headline news, or for that to be, you know, people's social justice issue of choice, and you know, nothing else is important, just that issue. I just don't get it. Cody just asked the question, Professor Dave, would you rather vote for Woodrow Wilson or Kamala Harris?
I'd rather shoot myself. Woodrow Wilson was the worst president. Kamala Harris would give him a run for the money in a very major way. I have a friend who knows her, and he says there's stupid and then there's Kamala. So, but Woodrow Wilson is the rock star of losers. But
what did Michael Scott tell tell Toby if he had a gun and 2 bullets and Osama bin Laden and Toby was in a room, he would shoot Toby twice? Well, yeah,
I remember that.
Yeah. So look, any questions y'all got, drop them in the chat, y'all. Professor Dave, we got about another 30 minutes to go. Professor Dave, let's get to climate change. Did you see Jerome Powell was talking about the jobs report or something? And did you see the climate activists storm the stage?
No, I didn't. Tell me about it. Give me a quick thumbnail sketch.
Oh man. How about, I think it'd be better if I show it to you. It was pretty funny. So I don't know exactly what this was for, but Jerome Powell was giving a speech and the climate activist stormed the stage, and Jerome Powell had a little mic slip, but check it out. I'm gonna share it right here.
Market remains tight.
Can you see that?
Although improvements in most forecasters, we expect growth to moderate in coming quarters. Of course.
Jerome Powell, by refusing to treat climate change like a systemic risk,
thank you.
You are putting us at
Thank you very much.
disaster.
Thank you very much.
Yep.
Thank you. Just close the fucking door.
Did he say that? Did he say just close the fucking door?
Yeah.
That's funny. That's funny. That's great. Just close the fucking door.
Yeah.
They should glue their lips shut. Glue them to the bumper of a bus. I don't know. the way to understand climate change is to read Eric Hoffer's 1953 book, The True Believer.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great book. It's a brilliant book. These are people who lack meaning in their lives, and they're looking for some way to get meaning. And so they attach themselves to something they perceive to be this big grand thing, and now they get to be part of something big and grand.
Mm-hmm.
They're ignorant. I would gladly debate any of them because I would destroy them in a heartbeat. And I did a podcast with Tom Nelson last week, I think it was, on climate change. It was a bunch of stuff, but we were laughing because he's a climate changer. We kind of know each other digitally, and we're just howling at the stupidity of it all. I had a chat with Konstantin Kaysen. There's a bright guy. I was at a meeting last month, and I sat down and chat with him, and he gave
New Orleans last week. Oh shit! Hit me up, man.
He gave a speech at the Oxford Union in a debate that was legendary speech, and I said to him, I said, how long did it take you to cross over from either agnostic or believing to disbelieve? He said, a couple hours. That's all it takes. All you have to do is actually open your mind and start reading. And then you discover all the problems with the climate change story. And then what you realize, you go, oh, wait a minute, they lied to me again. Why? $150 trillion. That buys a lot of lies. So, give me part of the narrative, and I'll tell you why it's complete crap.
Yeah, it just feels like, a lot of those activists, like you said, they're just wanting to belong to something, and
That's
they
right.
don't realize that, there's people behind the scenes pulling the strings, but and it's kind of a shame because, there are true environmentalists. They are true people that actually, are fighting, big corporations, like RFK Jr., I'd say would be like a true environmentalist.
Yeah,
but like
30 years of that probably.
Running around and throwing oil or throwing paint on buildings, like you're ruining or blocking
paintings.
Yeah,
blocking traffic.
Yeah, you're
That's
really
why they invented studded tires.
Josh just asked the question, Dave, did you see California essentially ban hand counting ballots for election? Oh, I wonder why. Most secure election of all time, guys. The election was not stolen. It was the most secure election of all time for the YouTube algorithm.
I watched a video the other day of a woman. It's one of these ones I couldn't tell who she was, and I couldn't tell if she really knew what she was talking about. But her claim was that the Italian Secret Service or something had their fingers all over the election. I told someone that, and I said, why would they do that? And I said, well, because all these different governments and agencies and stuff are all intertwined. So if we want to cap some banana republic dictator, we'll go get MI5 or MI6 or Mossad or something to cap them. We don't need to do it. They'll do it for us. And so, like the Steele dossier, right? Same thing. And the elections. Yeah, they're not,
I didn't see that story that he's referring to.
I'm not going to believe another election until they straighten them out because they're total crap.
It's kind of frustrating, what I'm saying? It's kind of frustrating. I'm in Louisiana. I'm pretty happy so far, with our governor that was elected.
Right.
So, I hate to think like this, but in a sense of what's going on right now, the states govern themselves. So like, as long as your state is good, you're going to be kind of insulated from the craziness. But I hope that, people see the state's doing well and try to emulate that. Cody asked another question. He said, okay, last question. This one is serious. I know that you don't want to touch Israel with a 40-foot stick, but what do you believe Netanyahu's best option is from this point forward?
I'm not pleading the fifth on this. I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know much. It's interesting with Netanyahu. You're seeing that even Yuval Noah Harari coming out and saying that Netanyahu, I guess, like the way their government's set up,
they should vaccinate him with a drip, with an IV drip
for his safety.
Until you get the desired biomedical result.
Did you see? I seen you had posted about the Biden and DHS claim there's no disaster at the border.
Yeah, he's a liar. Mayorkas,
Mm-hmm.
he's just a liar. I've just finished a book on the border. You interview anyone who's been on the border. Kennedy, even that's the interesting thing about Kennedy is he's not only a quick learner, but he can change his mind very quickly. It's not a political change.
Mm-hmm.
It's from data.
Yeah.
And he went down to the border and came back and said, "Holy shit, build a wall."
Mm-hmm.
And he said that there's about 2% Hispanics coming over the border, and the rest are from faraway places.
Mm-hmm.
This border, and this year I'm trying to write about pedophilia networks and their influence on geopolitics.
Mm-hmm.
So my theory is that Epstein's just tip of the iceberg, just tip of the iceberg.
Oh yeah.
And that geopolitical events are being steered and guided by pedophilia-based blackmail and things like that constantly. And the number of kids disappearing coming across the borders and nearing 100,000 a year. Where are they going? They're not going to trailer parks.
Well, not a peep from about that, from our mainstream media, unfortunately, either. It's
because they're going into the basements of CEOs and presidents of countries and stuff.
It's a big club.
I have dug into the pedophilia networks, and it's a very dark and bizarre world when you dig into it, because you're not going to get some article out of USA Today telling you what's going on. You have to get used to reading very odd source material. You have to get used to listening to interviews of people who are reformed, who sort of pulled away from the network.
Mm-hmm.
And put their lives back together. And as a consequence, they're probably crackheads and prostitutes, and some of them have split personalities, right? Because at 5 or 6 years old, they got sucked into this network. They're broken individuals. So you got broken individuals testifying against and pointing fingers at prominent, globally prominent individuals. Like one woman who's a woman named Annika Lucas, for example, is a well-known sort of rehabilitated victim.
Mm-hmm.
She talks about being heavily occupied. They get passed around, but they tend to have particular suitors. And so she said, two-time Prime Minister of Belgium was her sugar daddy when she was 6 years old. Others talk about the prime minister head of Australia. There's people pointing fingers at Gerald Ford and George Bush Sr.
Mm-hmm.
This is serious stuff.
Oh, if you want to see crazy, obviously everybody knows about, Epstein Island all over the news, but Epstein had a ranch, I believe, in New Mexico called Zorro Ranch. And man, they got some documentaries on that, from independent journalists. And man, it is like the creepiest, like you couldn't even make a scary movie that would be creepier than this,
And I have several sort of working hypotheses theories. One is, first of all, Hollywood is profoundly corrupted.
Oh,
and
yeah.
You say why? And you go, well, because if you want to corrupt the message, you got to corrupt the messenger. And so I have this, I think they do what I call fictionalizing reality. So they'll take something that's known, something that's true.
Mm-hmm.
Like, take, for example, Bourne Identity is MK Ultra. It is MK Ultra. The Bourne Identity is MK Ultra. And so you make a movie out of it. So when you hear about MK Ultra, you go, oh, that's the Bourne Identity. You've right away already anchored yourself to fiction.
Yeah.
And then Eyes Wide Shut, right? This is satanic cult. There's others. The Good Shepherd is CIA stuff.
Yeah.
And so they create this. The other thing they do is, I don't think they corrupt powerful people. I think they corrupt people and then give them power.
Well, that's interesting you said it, because he's in this chat right now. My friend Lewis, it was some TV show where he said, like, basically like aliens have taken over the politicians, but they made a TV show or something about it so that if the plan ever got unveiled, they say, oh no, that was just a TV show, like you were saying with the Bourne Identity. So the connection between the intelligence agencies and turn that hold on once. I'm sorry, Professor Dave. What's Mike X? What's the book on the border? What other books are you currently reading?
I can't remember the title, but it's named J.J. Carrell, Carrell. I have on my to-do list to reach out to him and ask him some questions that were not covered in his book, and I suspect he knows about them and didn't cover them.
Mm-hmm.
If you want to read about, if you want to go dark in this stuff, probably the single best source is to start paying attention to what Liz Crokin, Crokin. She's been banging on this drum very hard. And again, it's one of these things where you get into it and you go, is it possible I've just lost my mind? Is it possible I'm just too deep and I'm falling for QAnon bullshit, which I don't even know what QAnon is, right? QAnon is just a label to make you feel like an idiot. So apparently I'm QAnon. I've not been invited to a meeting yet. So I'm sitting there, and now if a month ago you had said to me, who's the most famous Satanist in the world? Satanists are these weird characters, right? They do ritual sacrifice. They do all sorts of stuff. It's real Satanism. And they eat shit you shouldn't be eating. And I would have said, oh, that's easy. That's Marina Abramovic. She's a famous Satanist.
Oh,
and then she has these dinner parties where they pretend to eat cadavers. And you look at the dinner party, you go, wait a minute, those are famous people. Why are they sitting at a dinner party pretending to eat a cadaver? And then she talks about, cutting your finger and mixing it with semen and then drinking that. And you're going, that's getting pretty close to way too weird, right?
And Zelensky made her like the ambassador to, it's like, it's creepy. We got another.
So the Zelensky thing's a real problem because I'm thinking you're too deep, Dave. You've gone nuts. And then Zelensky makes her an ambassador, not to another country. He puts her in charge of the Ukrainian school system. You find people who've been caught trafficking children. A woman named Laura Silsby got caught twice trafficking children.
She was working for the Clintons, huh?
She was working for the Clintons. Where does she work now? She works for the Amber Alert system.
That's weird. I saw that. That is weird.
You want to find a pedophile, find an organization that's job is to deal with children, and you will find the pedophiles there.
So Aaron just asked a question for us. What do you think about Dr. Stephen Gray? I can't for the life of me think of who that is.
Yeah, I'm drawing a blank. It looks familiar, but I'm drawing a blank.
Oh, he's a UFOologist.
I'm not a UFO believer.
Is he the guy?
I'm not a UFO believer.
Yeah, me neither. I'm with you there.
It's the physics. It's the physics.
I think he's the guy that came out and said he had all like the meetings at Area 51 with the.
No, that's another guy.
Yeah, maybe that's another guy.
It's a guy in Rogan. But the problem I have with UFOs is you really have to defy the laws of physics as we know them, and you can say, okay, maybe there's an alien culture out there and I believe there's aliens out there by the gazillion. The universe is way too big not to have more life forms, not to have intelligent ones, but the distances are so monumental that the odds of them getting here is almost zero. And if in the micro smidgen probability they can get here, they're such superior beings, they don't give a shit about us.
Yeah, why would they come? Like if they could,
and why would they go? Why would they go kill a bunch of cows in a field in Iowa? Right. The whole story. I think the alien story is again fictionalizing reality, where what they're trying to do is they want talking points, and now the Air Force is pretending like the aliens are real. And I think it's because a lot of our defense weaponry is getting very alien-like. So we've got these, autonomous drone things that they can do shit. I'm going to write about directed energy weapons this year too, and the things they can do is extraordinary. We should be afraid of them, and they're very real. They're not Star Wars.
Oh, it's like an ion cannon. Yeah,
there's a lot of them. There's a lot of different ones, and then the question is, are we seeing evidence of them? If so, where, how, what's the evidence? But they're real. They're very real.
They were thinking that was Hawaii, but Aaron said that we're in contact with them and talks about how the dark agencies of Lockheed, Skunk, Works, etc., and are using the tech to human traffic. Now I know who he's talking about. Yeah, that dude did a documentary. He's supposed to be like some big whistleblower, and he's essentially saying that they were using the alien tech to traffic children. He did, man. Can't remember what podcast he was on.
I think to the extent that someone's trying to cover stuff, I think they bury the truth inside a bunch of crazy shit. Like if you go to YouTube and you search Building 7 or something, or search 9/11,
Mhm.
you find all sorts of batshit stuff, and a sane person would watching, oh, that's crap, I'm out of here.
Mhm.
Because the YouTube's littered with the stuff that's garbage.
Mhm.
And so it's like if you search, Hillary Clinton death toll, right?
Mhm.
To know the Clintons is to be a great risk of getting whacked. Huge risk. I mean, way worse than COVID. But if you search it, you just get fact checks as far as the eye can see. So
Mhm.
I have this rule of thumb: when you start seeing a lot of fact checks, someone's hiding something.
I love when someone sends me the fact check and I'm like, who owns the fact check? You know what I'm saying?
They're all
yeah.
owned by the bad guys.
Oh,
They're
yeah.
all owned by the bad
Oh, yeah.
guys. Every last one of them.
Or, what's even funnier to me is like, somebody will send you a fact check, but then if you actually like read the fact check, like the whole
Sometimes it doesn't
thing,
check the facts.
yeah, sometimes it actually like makes your point, but it finds like inconsistency to like,
That's right.
invalidate it. And I'm just like,
That's right.
did you even read this? Like it's kind of crazy. But going back to Zelensky, so did you see? So he came out and he was, begging for more money, but then he
He's
said,
done. He's done.
he's done. You think they're gonna
Well, I
send
don't
him to
know.
Belize?
Well, I don't know what they're going to do. It's conceivable Putin and he'll now get together and sign a peace deal, or it's conceivable someone in the Azov battalion will whack them. Our former puppets tend to have a high fatality rate.
Yeah.
And so he could die.
Gaddafi,
But
Saddam.
I'm pretty sure that the Ukrainian story, which I wrote a lot about last year, and while the cool kids were all talking about what an evil dude Zelensky is, Putin is, I took Putin's side on this, and I wrote intensely explaining why Putin played the best hand he had, and that NATO is the problem. I put 100% of the Ukrainian war on NATO, 100%.
Yeah, if we rewind back, obviously before the craziness in the Middle East, and we rewind back to I call that like that Netflix chapter, that series, that season that was going on, the Ukraine Russia, and you were one of the few that were really speaking out, you know what I'm saying, and really calling it. And now, like when we see where we're at now,
I found about 40 guys, serious players, right? Guys like Greenwald and Tucker. There were guys who were getting the story.
Yeah.
First of all, to say Putin's an evil madman is to ignore the fact. I watched every Putin speech he ever gave. And there's subtitles. People say, well, how do you know the subtitles are real? I said, well, there are people who speak Russian, so that'd be kind of a stupid scam to try to put fake subtitles, right? I watched every Putin speech. The guy is unbelievably good at that shit. And so he gets asked questions. You go, oh, that's a tough question. Then he answers. You go, oh, that was a good answer.
Yeah.
Put it this way, he's way sharper than Trudeau, Biden, Macron, Boris Johnson, these guys. And so the problem with Putin and the problem with Trump is they are the two biggest nationalists. The globalists don't like nationalists. So they got to take those two out.
But you think Russia's stronger now since all this is?
Oh, Russia's way stronger.
Strongest it's ever been?
Well, I don't know about ever. That's a long time. But Russia made a couple tactical mistakes where when the Ukraine war first started, I drove my wife nuts because it would be on the news. And I'd say, Candace, this isn't a war. And she'd say, yeah, of course it is. What are you talking about? I go, look, this is not Saving Private Ryan. This is not Baghdad Day One with buildings blowing up as far as the eye can see. This is Russians and tanks getting out, talking to people, grandmothers on film whining about something in Ukrainian with subtitles, with their machine guns to defend Mother Ukraine. Something exploding so many miles away, don't know what it is, burnt cars. I go, burnt cars? That's Detroit. So actually, when I wrote about it, I showed 6 pictures of Ukraine. They said, sorry, I duped you. That one's Baltimore. That one's Detroit. That one's Lebanon. That one's, and then I said, that one's Ukraine 2016. And
Yeah.
I said, see how easy that was?
Especially with AI and the deep fakes now.
But you don't need deep fakes. You just need to show images. Remember, there was this hellacious firefight that turned out to be filmed in a shooting in the shooting range out in the Midwest.
they had the Snake Island story or whatever.
Oh, the Snake
yeah.
Island story, everything. So the first thing I noticed is it wasn't a war. It just wasn't. He sent over. It was a military intervention.
Yeah.
And I believe that he believed that it was like a fastball past the chin of NATO saying, look, we can play this the way you're trying to make me play it. And then he thought he'd get him to the table. His miscalculation was NATO didn't give a shit. And so NATO's now allowed an estimated 400 to 500,000 Ukrainians die.
Mm-hmm. Oh, a lot die.
To piss off Russia. Now, do you think the mothers of those dead Ukrainians would agree with that? Do you think? No. The answer is no, because in that region of the world, borders are changing all the time. And there's not a shred of evidence Putin wants to reassemble the Soviet Union. There's one clip they play where Putin says the biggest disaster was when the Ukraine totally fell apart. When the Soviet Union totally fell apart. People say, see, he wants to put the Soviet Union back together. No, then he followed that with, it's because it released a bunch of countries who are rudderless and directionless, and it was chaos.
Mm-hmm.
So he said this was a disorderly solution. That's rational. But they said now, I don't think he didn't want to ever take possession of Ukraine. He just couldn't give the control of Ukraine to NATO because we have been lying our asses off to Putin for 15 years now.
Mm-hmm.
We have been lying our asses off.
That was the line in the sand that Ukraine doesn't join NATO or it's on.
And he told us that repeatedly. He said, look, guys, you've been moving NATO east since you promised not to do it. And we promised not to reassemble the Warsaw Pact, and you broke your promise and we didn't. But now you want Ukraine. You can't have it. And we said, fuck you.
What's the meme? It said, how dare Russia put its country next to all the United States military bases.
That's right. That's exactly right.
Professor Dave, we got another question. So he said that Dave should go on the Fresh and Fit podcast. Almost 2 million subscribers. Scott Ritter and George Gammon have both been on. Yeah, now I know who y'all talking about. I did see that little, I don't know if I believe the guy. It was pretty crazy to listen to, but Professor Dave, do you know what the Fresh and Fit podcast is?
I don't. I might, but man. I don't remember it by name. Who's the host?
So it's a guy named Myron, and he's what you would call like red pilled. So what they do is they bring like Andrew Tate on. They bring those types
controversial figures. Yeah.
Yeah. But they'll bring like a bunch of like OnlyFans girls, and they'll all be sitting at a table, and they'll just have these, relationship kind of like what's men's role in dating. And
this is like, that Twitter feed, something like sweet and pearly things. There's a woman, something of pearly something things. And it's just this woman who presents very traditional female values, and she pisses off 95% of the women of the world by making statements about the role of women in society. But she's funnier than shit. She's entertaining to watch. Pearly something.
You definitely need to look them up, because I think that I think this guy's right that you'd be the perfect guest. I think they would like you a lot, just for like the geopolitical, because they touch on a lot of different topics. But they had Andrew Tate on, and they had a bunch of the feminists on, and they're talking. The feminists are going back and forth with him. I don't need no man. I'm independent. I make my own money. This and that. Women can do everything that men can do. Men are bad, yada, yada. Well, as this is happening, some guy breaks into the studio like with a gun or a knife or something. And it was just crazy where you watch.
Sounds like a setup.
It may have been. I don't know. But what happened was is when that happened, all the women, the feminist women, like snapped and then got down and ran, and then Andrew ran to the threat to fight the guy, so it was just kind of crazy. Well, it might have been
someone made some interesting statement where they said, I can't remember who it was, that said the Marxists want to want to commandeer control of the means of production. And then when
Mhm.
they get it, they realize they don't know how to produce anything.
You seize the means of production. Yeah, of
So
course.
I think this idea that I don't need men is stupid, because I think both sexes need each other. And so the
Absolutely.
militancy against men, if you really want to emasculate men, you can, but then you're going to end up with worthless men. And so the trick, I think, the trick is not to not need them. The trick is to, so I have actually hundreds of maxims. One is that men fix cars, women fix men. And the other one is, men marry women hoping they'll never change, and women marry men hoping they will.
Patrick David.
Yeah, Patrick Bet David.
Yeah, he came out with a book, Choose Your Enemies Wisely, I think is the name of it. Choose Your Enemies Wisely. And that's what he was saying, that, the feminists, like, hey, I promise, if you're a feminist out there, like, men are not your enemy. Like, this is not the enemy you want. Like, we are your friends. We are not enemies. But
they're defying biology, right?
Of course.
So what we're trying to do is find some way for the whole system to be fair.
Mm-hmm.
One can argue that the biologically driven division of the sexes was raw,
mm-hmm.
right? That's pretty easy to imagine, that back when it was based on just raw force. But women have a kind of a cunning to deal
mm-hmm.
with men since the dawn of time, so that you get this big scary bastard, but women have this way of saying, yeah, but I can wrap them around my finger like a wet noodle. and so it's just, they're different. And to say they're not different, I ran into someone who said their differences are more, how we raise them, and I'm going, you're full of shit. They're different
nature
species.
versus nurture.
They're different species, for Christ's
Mm-hmm.
sake. I can't even believe we procreate, right? It's just totally nuts. I had a discussion with a couple of kids this week who are very rational individuals who couldn't fathom the idea. I'm going to backtrack a little here. Couldn't fathom the idea that preventing transgender women from competing in women's sports. They couldn't fathom why that was rational to prevent that.
This was college students?
Yeah, these are grad students, and they're reasonable people, and they've been raised on a diet of this crap, right?
Mm-hmm.
If you're getting this from daycare,
it's a group thing. Yeah, it becomes like a group thing.
How would you defy that? It's a brainwashing.
What did Dr. Robert Malone call it? He called it something.
He's been pretty militant. In fact,
what did Robert Malone call it when everybody's thinking the same thing?
Groupthink is one way, but
it was some.
There's a mass psychosis.
Mass psychosis formation.
That's Desmond. That's Matthias.
Oh,
Desmond's.
okay.
By the way, it's also a good book. Matthias Desmond's book is very good.
Mm-hmm. Professor David.
I'm in a doctor Zoom group, and they started out as a bunch of normal doctors who were saying, "Wait a minute, this COVID story is fucked up.
Mm-hmm.
The vaccine story is wrong," and it obviously collected a bunch of odd characters, including a chemist, for example, guy who was NSA, lawyers who were fighting the big court fights about the vaccine and stuff were all there. Bobby Kennedy showed up, Malone, McCall, all these guys went through it. Guys like Ryan Cole were regulars there, and they're all dark. Every last one of them is now New World Order levels of dark. They do not believe there's anything simple about that story. They don't think it was just human error. They don't think it was just guys trying to get it right and blowing it. They all believe that there's something. There is an evil over the Shire that most people are not fully understanding.
100%. 100%.
Right. I talked to Aaron Cariotti, who was running UC Irvine's vaccine program as a medical policy wonk in their med school. Started to smell a problem and ended up turning, and then he got fired, right? Which is what authoritarians do when they don't appreciate your opinion. Which shows you how bad it is, right? When you're getting fired for saying you don't think the vaccine's healthy, then you are the problem. It's not the vaccine. And I got vaccinated to keep my job. So you say, well, Dave, you're a coward. I'm going, I'm the breadwinner, right? it's not like it's 68-year-old guy in Ithaca is going to get another job.
Mhm.
And so I said, okay, it's just a theory that it's bad for you, so I'll take my chances. Then my Zoom group was saying you can't get the boost. I go, well, they're gonna fire me if I don't get the boost. And since I got the first two and had no effect, now you're asking me to give up my job for a third? There's a problem, right? And so I'm on my third. My blood pressure's up, by the way. But it could be I'm just pissed off at the loser. So could be that.
Oh man, Professor Dave, are you going to do a year-end review this year? I mean, we're getting
I'm trying.
closer.
It's hard. It's hard going. Every year it feels like I'm ripping I feel like I'm doing, like that Ruski up in the Arctic who took out his own appendix.
Mhm.
Every year feels that way. This year I'm going to go down dark rabbit holes for which the probability of me being right is way lower than I'm usually comfortable with.
Mhm.
So normally I pick on something like the Las Vegas shootings,
Mhm.
where it's very sort of offbeat. But by the time I'm done reading about it, I go, I'm dead right. Period. The Vegas shootings were not done by Stephen Paddock. They were done totally different. Everything's
Mhm.
wrong with it. This year I'm going to be going down what I call my 90-10 rule, where there's a 90% chance 10% of it's right, and a 10% chance 90% of it's right. And so when you start writing about DEWs and Lahaina fire, some percentage of the story about Lahaina fires is absolutely screwed up. But then
That story don't make no sense, dude. That story.
Well, there's a lot of stuff that's just purely political that makes no sense, like dropping the building codes and removing the insurance
Not turning the
policies from the
power off,
houses, not turning the power off. They did
blocking the roads.
They claim they turned the power off. That's the problem.
I don't think they did.
The power company claims they turned off 6 hours before the fire started.
And did you see that one house that didn't burn down? It was like one house with like a blue roof that was like perfect.
Some of the blue roof stories I think are fake. But
Yeah,
there are stories of the cops blocking the road so you couldn't get out of Lahaina, the sending the kids home. And so remember how many kids supposedly died?
a bunch, they said, huh?
Huge numbers, right? USA Today had 967 kids missing,
That's
something
sad,
like that.
man.
And then you go to Wikipedia.
And then The Rock and Oprah are begging for money. It's like
Yeah,
two
that worked well, didn't it?
billionaires, and then they took some heat for that. You know what I'm saying? Like two billionaires begging us for money. Like, man, y'all, you know what I'm saying? Like, y'all give them money.
Well, also they own land right there, so they're gonna be scooping it up.
Oh yeah, yeah. And their properties just happened to not get burned. It was coincidence, I'm sure.
And eviction notices appeared within about a week and a half.
Yeah,
and things like that. So the whole story's fucked up.
My
But then
mom's
you
been to
get
that
where
area
the fire
too.
come from. Where'd the fire come from? And that's where you get into the DEWs.
Well,
Are those weird fires? Now we're getting into low probability, fascinating if true stories.
This would be my take on it, that the official story, I don't know what happened, man. I wasn't there. I'm not a scientist. I'm not, but the official story is not what happened. And that's for everybody else to go figure out. But we got another question from Michael. Dave, your thoughts on Dr. Judy Mikovits? Man, who is Dr. Judy Mikovits? That name's in my head. I can't.
Yeah, she was early in the COVID story, and I've had sort of mixed reviews. I hear people who know her say she's really good, and one of the problems with the COVID story. One of the problems with the COVID story is
she was in the COVID Land documentary, I think.
Yeah.
I'm looking at her. Yeah, okay. I don't know much about her.
The problem with the COVID story is we saw the same faces over and over again.
Yeah.
And so at some point you say, I really want, and some of them were very prominent, right? They're super prominent, unbelievably prominent, scientists of the highest order, but sort of like climate change. But at some point you say, I kind of want to see some fresh faces who've come in later and said, yes, I agree, and the articles are coming out, but I don't know. The problem is anything like that, you're going to attract grifters too. One could argue I'm one of them, right? Except I don't make any money. But, I was on a panel discussion on economic booms and busts with 3 elite people and me. And I'm sitting there on this panel thinking, how'd I get here? What wormhole did I go through to get on this panel? And one who doesn't believe the narrative that was being told by the panel could say, well, the guy's a grifter, right? He doesn't know what he's talking about. I think I do, but you know, the climate change story, people always say, well, you know, that guy, he doesn't study climate scientists. I said, no, he has a fucking Nobel Prize in physics, solar physicist, right? I don't need a climate scientist. I need a smart guy who's not a liar.
Yeah, I mean, you know, the truth can come from anybody. Doesn't
Right.
necessarily need a degree or, you know, and a lie can come from, you know, anybody.
And the lie, as soon as you get the lie, see, when you hear someone lying, you should immediately go, okay, why'd they lie? And now the stories, now I got to worry. So like Merrick Garland, a couple weeks ago, said 5 cops died on January 6th. Now, it's a big enough story. He knows the body count. And the number of cops who died at the January 6th site was 0. There was one who died that night and whose family said, look, he had some health ailment. He said he was fine. He came home, he was fine. And then there's 4 who committed suicide, which out of what, 150 cops maybe? 4 suicides? You go, now you got a plot thickener. Right? That's and I presented that to someone who was kind of doubting. I said 4 suicides out of 150 cops. They said, well, it was really stressful. I said, that was a typical day in a cop's life. That's what they face every day. If you can't face 4 hours of that, you would have committed suicide years ago because you walk into horror stories. And so 4 cops committing suicide tells me that someone had to whack 4 cops because they knew too much.
Mike asks, why didn't they sound the alarm? I think, is he talking about in Lahaina?
Yeah.
And why did they block the roads? Like there was people, like I was watching interviews where they blocked the roads and people like disobeyed the cops to get around, to get out.
That's right. So they end running the roadblocks. Now, then there's the questions, do you know for a fact that's true? And I certainly had no reason to doubt it when I read about it. But here's the funny thing. You guys who read the Lahaina stories that played out, you have this vivid imagery of all the things that don't make sense. Now go read the Wikipedia write up on it and you go, are they talking about the same story?
Right.
Their death toll is 97. They don't mention anything about a kid getting killed. They don't mention any of this other stuff. And then they get to the very end and they make allusions to Russian and Chinese disinformation. Right. And you go, so when back to Merrick Garland, when he says 5 cops died. So I say, why did you just lie? You who were a candidate for the Supreme Court of the United States, just bald-faced lie, or is it bare-faced or bold-faced? Look that one up.
I think it's bold-faced.
It's all of them at this point.
Bold-faced law.
You look them up and they all have different histories, it turns out.
Yeah.
So why did he lie like that? He has to know that's not true. So why would he lie? Well, Mayorkas lies all the time, but Garland didn't have to make up that lie. So that's kind of Biden level lying where he said, I graduated first in my class from this college. You go, you never went to that college, dude. So I don't know how that's possible. You know, Biden's lies are spectacular lies. So Garland's apparently are too. Garland, to me, the biggest disaster in the United States of the last few years, the biggest disaster is weaponization of the DOJ.
It's like the 4th branch of government where it's this, you know, just
it's the rising authoritarianism, period. Yeah. And complete loss of control of the media is also big, but I think that happened long ago.
That's been, if you think about it, that's been at least since the 70s, 80s, you know, like the independent journalists, like you brought up Glenn Greenwald, like there's not many, you know, very few and far in between.
Right. And then you start digging into Tucker Carlson, what went on in that story's batshit crazy. The Dominion lawsuit and why Fox settled, stuff like that. And so,
I don't think it was because of that. I think it was because of he did that January 6th piece. I think that was the last.
I actually think he tried to get fired. I think he was trying to. If you look at the stories he was telling over the previous 6 months, he was touching every third rail he could figure. He talked about Building 7 collapsing. He talked about the CIA whacking Kennedy. He talked about the CIA taking out Nixon with Watergate as a setup. He talked about everything. I think he's saying, I got to get out of my contract because I want to go do something else. And so they finally fired him. And then they gave him a salary, kept him on payroll, thinking, okay, we've got a non-compete clause. But that only applies to him taking a job. in competing. Free speech is free speech. So he's now working for free. And if they're going to pay him $25 million a year to shut him up, they're wasting a lot of money because he is not shutting up.
Yeah, I mean, I think what is he getting more viewers now on Twitter?
Yeah,
or
and
X
then when that non-compete clause is over, he will have built a pretty good fan base, and he'll be able to write his own paycheck again.
Yeah, I saw something. I don't know if it was true that Trump was talking about making him the VP. What do you think of that?
Well, the question is, did Trump say that, or did someone say Trump said that?
Someone said Trump said that.
This is the problem we face on a daily basis. So if you want to understand why Robert F. Kennedy's nuts, all you have to do is read an article about what someone says Robert F. Kennedy said. If you listen to Robert F. Kennedy's podcasts, you find out that's not what he says.
You know, he went on the Breakfast Club. That's like, you know, like kind of like a hip hop show. And I didn't think they'd resonate with his message because, you know, I watched the show and I watched some of the other, you know, more right leaning candidates will go on there and they'll kind of, you know, banter back and forth. But man, they really gave him the floor, and you could see even in the comments people being like, you know, like, wow, he woke them up. You know, he really, you know, he breaks stuff down where it's hard to.
He's very quick learned. He's very sharp. And the other thing is, you sense he's trying not to lie.
Yeah.
And that's a huge part of it. People are so tired of the liars. Now, that's why he won't get near the White House. And if he looks like he's going to get near the White House, I wouldn't underwrite his insurance policy. Right? And he admits
terrible,
that.
Man. It's so terrible. Like this is like this is like real life. You know what I'm saying?
Well,
like,
then the question is, you'd say, well, how would they get away with that one, right? It would be like whacking Trump. How would you get away with that one? But then you realize that the modern era used to be they had to get away with stuff. Now they actually do an in-your-face treatment of these problems. So the January 6th committee, in your face, putting a guy away who wasn't even at January 6th for 22 years. That's in your face. If you read about the history of rising authoritarian states, you find two recurring themes: confusion. You got to admit we're confused.
I'm confused.
And demoralization. In your face is a way of saying, look, we're going to do this. We're going to take the ball around to the right. We're going to drive to the hoop. We're going to stuff the ball, and you can't stop me. So that's what they're doing now. So, and the other thing is, if you own the media as well as they own it now, you just have to make sure that no one tells the story. The laptop, what a perfect story. You knew within 24 hours that laptop was real.
We talked about it. Yeah, we talked about it.
Right?
Yeah.
You knew within 24 hours it was real, and then they just shut it down.
Then the narrative, it gets memory holded, and then that becomes like, whether it's January 6th or the laptop, you know, their story becomes, it's like, you know, revisionist history, where like that's just,
or
you know,
it's old news.
Yeah. So if you bring it up, nobody will want to debate you or talk about it.
I'll tell you what's said to be on the laptop, which again, who knows? But what's said to be on the laptop is a bunch of pedophilia shit.
Oh, 100%. I mean, 1,000%. 1,000%.
So the laptop. So we never got Epstein's list. We never got the January 6th tapes. How is it possible those January 6th tapes aren't public? That's why I hated McCarthy. I wanted Getz to take out McCarthy. Because McCarthy lied. McCarthy lied to his own people.
Yeah. I don't like
Get him out of there. Get him out of there. People are saying, oh, Getz is mucking everything up. No, he's not. No, he didn't. He needs to show McCarthy that he can't lie like that.
It seems like the social issues divide the right and the left, but like there's certain issues that like could really bring us together. And one would be, you know, the Epstein client list. One could be the January 6th tapes, COVID. And like this could really, you know, unite like the populace into actually doing something.
Up, I guess.
But,
I don't know.
But
I don't think we can handle it.
No,
I don't think we can handle it.
We're too divided on social issue. Then you have, you know, the left that's, you know, they're having to do mental gymnastics to like make sense of what everything going on right now, everything from Bidenomics to inflation to COVID to, you know, Zelensky. And then the right seems to be, the more extreme, the MAGA arm of the right. They just seem to be really confused of my dad would fall into that category where it's like Trump's got everything under anything you bring up. Trump's going to get in and take care of that. Don't worry. When Trump gets
in, you're not going to elect the problem away.
Oh, I agree. That's one thing. Yeah.
But one lobe says I want Trump in there in part out of spite. They did so much bad stuff. I'm going, okay, that's like in it's like in Yellowstone, the scene where they back the truck up to the bar and release the bull into the bar and just let him
see how crazy it's gonna get. Let's let Trump get back in.
And I'm going, okay, take some of these guys to the station. That's fine by me. But the other lobe of my brain says if we could find a good leader that was more uniting, and that would be Kennedy. But they're not going to let Kennedy in there. They're not going to let him in there.
Not a chance.
Not a chance.
Not a chance. I wish.
Who would they pick? Who would they rather have in there, Trump or Kennedy? Let's say they had to choose.
Trump. They already had him.
I know, but he's dangerous. Kennedy might, by unifying, might try to not blow the system up. Trump might blow the system up.
Trump's pretty mad right now, man.
Well, he doesn't look rattled, so I can't tell if that's his bravado or if he understands that this is just a game.
Professor Dave, you got to remember Trump's favorite book, Sun Tzu, The Art of War.
And so I think art of the deal.
Yeah, the art of Mike X. Am I bad for supporting Pinochet again? Is that the Rush? Didn't he die? Didn't he die?
Yeah, you're probably bad for supporting Pinochet. That's my guess. I don't know much about Pinochet, but I'm guessing. Yeah,
he was the head.
But he says, "Ha." He says, "Ha ha." I think he's testing my boundaries.
That's my boy, Mike. But Professor Dave, man, we're running out of time, man. Where can everybody find you at, man? If they want to follow you?
Well, if they're following this Twitter podcast, this is how you find me. Because I'm there.
Are you on any other socials? Just Twitter, X?
No, I'd love it if Facebook went away tomorrow.
Oh, no, Pinochet's the Chilean dictator. Okay.
I think Pinochet killed a lot of people.
Yeah. So he was actually, if you watch Breaking Bad, Gus Fring, that's where he was from, and he served under him. I don't know how I got those confused, but.
By the way, here's a brutal reality. I read a book on Operation Gladio, which was very clear. And it made sense to me. So we all know that the CIA's had their fingers in the drug world. Of
course.
Right?
Of course.
They were funding all their black ops with the drugs. Mm-hmm. What I don't think a lot of people know is that the triumvirate of organized crime, the CIA, and the Vatican being the bank, they didn't just have their fingers in the drug world. That was the drug world. That is the drug world. Those three are like three crime families who are cooperating to run the entire global drugs.
Yeah, the war on drugs, it's crazy, but there's so much people don't know about it. There's so much.
Name me a war on fill in the blank in which they actually try to win. War on X. Give me one where there's war on child trafficking. No, they're not trying to win. War on drugs. War on poverty. Is anyone trying to win these wars?
George Orwell broke it down perfectly in 1984. The war is meant to be continuous. It's meant to be a forever war.
We went from Afghanistan to Ukraine to Israel. Seamless.
Syria was in there. Yeah,
Yemen. We were bombing the shit out of Yemen. I know the Saudis were doing the bombing, but there are bombs. Where were the lefties when Yemen was getting their ass kicked? Where were the
drone
lefties?
Strikes?
And when I say lefty, I don't mean people left to center. I mean sanctimonious douchebags.
Yeah.
Who are screaming about one thing. And when I really get frustrated with Ukraine, when I say to the person, I said, okay, here's the deal. Which country bombed more countries and killed more people in the last 20 years? US or Russia?
U.S.
Orders of magnitude. Orders of
tenfold.
magnitude. We
When we
killed
do it, it's democracy. When we do it,
yeah,
it's democracy.
We're bringing democracy to the world. 4.5 million people. Show me something Putin's done that lands in the 4.5 million dead people category. And you can't. And so if you want to get all high and mighty about Putin, please show me your tweets where you talked about all the dead Middle Easterners. And if you've got tweets saying opposing the war in Yemen, opposing bombing Syria, which I've
Obama
written
drone
about,
strikes, Obama drone.
7 Muslim countries that liberal Democrat bombed. You elect a liberal Democrat, you expect to get a guy who's not bombing the shit out of everybody.
Amen.
Like that's Nikki Haley.
Yeah, going further, it's like, because people will say, "Oh, you're a Putin apologist, you're a Putin." It's like, listen here. If Putin and Russia want to cross this border, they're gonna have problems. You know what I'm saying? Like we've fought wars in the town I'm in. We fought the British here. You know what I'm saying? I'm in New Orleans. So this isn't pro Putin, but it's just like, this is not our problem. We're not the world police. This is a Europe problem. So we don't need to fund this war to kill, like you said, 500,000 Ukrainians. Like, we got to fund that.
And if you ever see one of those dynamic maps that shows the borders and the countries changing over the millennium, and it goes by decade or something, and it just shows, and we're fighting wars over trying to protect borders that are in a constant state of flux. So we're going to kill 400,000 Ukrainians because of some perceived border that defines them as Ukraine, which, by the way, Ukraine was part of Russia as of 1687 or something like that. They were in there until Khrushchev said, yeah, you can be your own country, 1957. Ukraine has been Russian the whole way. And so so it's not to say that Putin isn't a beast. Of course he's a beast. You show me a guy who's not a beast, I'll show you a guy who doesn't run Russia. You put Trudeau in Russia, he's a dead man. You put Biden in Russia, they'd feed him to the pigs.
I would rather live in Russia under Putin than in Canada under Trudeau.
I don't know if I would say that, but I respect Putin a lot more than Trudeau.
100%. I don't want to live in either of the places. I don't want to be in either of the places.
Look at what Trudeau did to the truckers.
Exactly. I don't want to be in either. I don't trust him at all. I don't want to.
Well, if you had asked me 8 years ago, if you had to escape the U.S., what countries would you have gone to? I would have said New Zealand, Australia, or Canada. Those are a bunch of Nazi strongholds when it came to COVID.
We saw, it got scary, especially New Zealand, fast, Yeah,
and Adhern Buckteeth, what's her name?
She was a demon.
Jacinda Adhern, yeah, what a Nazi.
She was like, was
she the dean of douche, right?
We are the news, like we are the source, like she was.
Right. If it doesn't come from us, it's not a fact, That's
yeah.
And there's something about her I find kind of sexy. I like the big teeth for some reason, but the fact that there's a desire to have sex with her does not make her a good leader, and she's an authoritarian.
Oh yeah.
Now
she's taking orders.
She's taking orders. That's right. So she's the Auschwitz guard or whatever, and you can blame her if you want. You could resign. She kind of did, but now she's still spewing her garbage. And remember that other guy from Australia? Remember that guy that oh God, he was so hateable. I love
the narrative from them now. It's like, we've forgiven ourselves for the COVID tyranny.
I know.
We're ready to move on.
We have not. The bottom line is we have not, because you guys didn't just make a mistake. You went full blown Nazi on us. No,
you showed your cards.
You are not forgiven. You destroyed lives. So you're not forgiven. And who is it? The guy at NYU. Scott Galloway. He was on Mar, I think, and he said I'd made mistakes. I support this, blah, blah, blah. But then he said, we're just trying to get it right. And he mentioned Fauci and the FDA and stuff like that. And I go, no, you weren't. You can say you were just trying to get it right. I'm okay with that. But when you pull the FDA into it and stuff like that, no, they are part of a crime syndicate.
Yeah, like nobody's been to jail yet. You know what I'm saying? It's like
No.
nobody, you know.
Well, it's like after the 08-09 crisis, how many bankers went to jail? Zippo. That was the beginning of the fourth turning, in my opinion. When we had to exact, even if it was just symbolic revenge. And everybody knows that finding a company $2 billion is not symbolic revenge. It's taking money from shareholders.
Yep.
And so we really need to string up a few bankers. And if we don't get it right next time, then it's going to be a problem. We've got to vaccinate some bankers.
Oh man, safe and effective. Anyway, y'all, man, that was an awesome episode, man. Y'all, we're running out of time. Y'all, please give my guy Professor Dave a follow. Professor Dave, you know, this was fun. Thank y'all for all the questions. Y'all had me laughing. And Professor Dave, maybe we'll touch back in a couple months, man. You know, the world's a crazy place, but I'd love to have you back on, my man.
I'm sitting at 99.4 thousand. So maybe this will push me over.
Oh, follow on Twitter?
99.4. They've been parking me there. I've been parked there for a long goddamn time. But slowly but surely working up. Once I get to 6 digits, then it's going to be like, okay.
Yeah, you got. I'm looking at. You got almost 100,000. That's a pretty impressive fall. And Professor Dave, I don't think you have nearly that
for a
many.
hoser, for a total hoser poser combo platter, right? That's pretty good.
Anyway, y'all. Well, thank y'all everybody for tuning in. Y'all have a great night. We are out. Peace.